Her grandfather grabbed her forcefully by the arm and pushed her to the bed. "It's surprising how you've grown into a fine young woman." He grinned, displaying his teeth. "The last time I saw you, you were so tiny I was scared to hold you." Anwulika tried to get up from the bed and away from him, but she had no luck. He threw her back on the bed and held her down. He was much stronger than she, despite his age. He pinned her down and pushed her panties aside. Anwulika struggled as he unceremoniously entered her, disregarding both their comfort and consent in his lustful pursuit of pleasure at any cost. The year was 2005, and it was a day after Christmas and 6 days to the New Year. Such were happy times, and the days Anwulika loved, but unknown to her, those were the days that would change everything. The end-of-year festivities were a big deal in most African homes and villages. That was the case in Anwulika's village, which was located in West Africa, a small Igbo community in the east of Nigeria. For Anwulika's family, end-of-the-year activities meant that everyone returned to the village for the holidays. That year, however, Anwulika's father was to be given a chieftaincy title, and that meant a lot of activities and festivities. The morning her life had turned upside down, Anwulika woke up to the sound of the native drums and the gongs. She heard the loud chanting of Igbo songs from the women, and also the loud praises of the young men as they danced into the family compound, which was a lot of acres, large and wide. She didn't need to be forced to get out of bed in the morning like all other days. She bolted straight out of bed and rushed to the Obian open structured building that was reserved as some sort of hall for the compound. Every Igbo compound had one. Her parents were already there, as well as her uncles, her aunt, and her older cousins. She watched the affair with silent awe, amazed that the air felt charged and electric. Little children danced around happily, and why wouldn't they? It was another day to eat and drink freely and spend time with each other without their mothers whisking them away. Anwulika felt the same joy. Hours later, Anwulika had her best dress on and her hands behind her back as she waited for her mother. They had to be in time for the chieftaincy ceremony, but before they left, however, her mother, who was dressed in a blouse and 2 wrappers and a big headgear, as was expected of a married Igbo woman, turned to her and said, "Anwulika, you are not to leave my side today. Inugo, do you hear? I don't want to look for you." To drive home her point, her mother pinched Anwulika's ear, and she cried out in pain, "Yes, Mama." That was all she said. The Igwe's palace was filled to the brim with villagers who wanted to witness the coronation of her father. Anwulika felt a certain pride wash over her as she looked over at her peers, who were with the other villagers. Anwulika was by her mother's side, just as she'd been asked to do, until it was time for her parents to seek the blessings of the Igwe. The Igwe, who was the traditional leader of the village, was feared and was rarely seen. It was said that he represented the Myo, the spirit, or the gods, and for that he was not to be sighted in public unless it was days for the festivals to honor the spirit and the gods of the land. That meant that her father and her mother had to make their way into the king's obi for his blessings. Dutifully, she waited. "Anwuli, do you know that as soon as your parents come out from Obi Igwe, they'll have to go to the shrine to see the chief priest?" One of Anwuli's distant cousins, Ojadili, who was also the same age as her, whispered in her ear. Anwuli swung around. "Why?" she asked innocently. She enjoyed listening to stories about her culture and learning about the traditions. "Because that's the way it's done," he said with that childlike resignation and threw his hands in the air. "But that is not why I am standing here all alone talking to you, while everyone else is already leaving. He folded his hands across his chest. He had Anwulika's attention now. She did not want to be left alone while her cousins did other fun things. She remembered earlier that they'd been discussing visiting the stream. Her mother never let her, and Anwulika was eager to go. "Where are all of you going?" she asked. Ojadili sighed. "We're going to the stream. Then after that, we'll come back to the compound, and by that time, everyone would have returned from the shrine. Nobody will know we left," he said in a convincing tone. That was all she needed to be told. While her parents were still in the Igwi's obi, Anwuli followed her cousins to the stream. Even though she should not have, Anwuli closed her eyes as the water washed over her face. She closed her eyes as she savored the coolness on her skin. After that, she stood aside and watched the stream flowing smoothly over the rocks. It was peaceful. Why did her mother keep her from such a sight? She wondered. She watched the other kids as they muddled themselves up in the clay pit, the hole with the mixture of mud and water that was the shallow extension of the stream. She'd refused to join them because she hated getting dirty, and deep down she was scared of her mother finding out about her little adventure. "Why are you acting like you've never seen a stream before?" Ojadili asked as he splashed water on her. Anwuli shrieked in horror and patted her dress down. She stared at Ojadili angrily. "Why did you pour water on my dress?" she asked in that weird mixture of Igbo and English. As an out-of-state kid, she did not know how to speak much of her native language because her parents never really had the time to teach her, since they were both so busy with their jobs. Ojadili laughed and shook his head at her. "What are you going to do? En Oyibo?" He jeered at her and laughed again. Anwuli bristled at his comments. She especially hated the word Oyibo, as it was clearly used to mock her since she could not speak Igbo. She knew Ojadili had a special bone to pick with her, but she didn't know why. "Leave me alone," she retorted and made to move away from him. Ojadili either didn't get the message or clearly chose not to. He came closer to her, laughing still. By now the other group of kids who were playing in the clay pit shuffled closer, eager to see how things would end. Anwulika looked to her cousins for help, but they all stood still. She was beginning to realize that Ojadili was the leader or the local bully. She didn't know the way back, and she was scared of getting lost. "Ojadili, please let's go back home. They must be back from the shrine by now," she said again. "They are not back from the shrine. In fact, they're only just getting started," he said, as if it was something she should have known. She wondered if he was right about the tone he'd used. She should know these things. "Tell us about your city life, Oyibo." Another of her cousins, a girl named Amaka, said out loud in Igbo. Anwulika eyed her, and the others huddled together in a group. Her mother, as always, had been right when she asked Anwulika to stay by her side. This was why. "Are you shy?" Ojadili taunted her. The sun was starting its descent, and it was getting dark outside. "Even if they've not finished the ceremony, let's go home. The night is coming," she said again, but this time her voice cracked with emotion. Then she saw it happen before she felt it. Ojadili rushed forward before she could say anything and pushed her into the stream. It happened so fast that she could not even scream. Anwulika gurgled water and struggled to stay afloat since she could not swim. She tried to flail her arms about in the water, but they were beginning to hurt, and she was fast losing her bearings. "Help!" she got burgled. A hand reached out to grab her and dragged her out of the stream. Anwulika coughed up water and almost choked on the water that filled her lungs. She bent over to the other side and coughed up a little more water. "This girl na ahibo," one of them said, pointing and laughing at her. Anwulika understood enough to know that they were calling her weak. The anger that clawed at her heart was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. It was hot and blazing. So she stood up, squeezed her clothes, and glared at Ojadili. "Why did you push me? My mother will know I went to the stream now," she said amidst tears. "Maybe you should have worn something else." He taunted her. He was beginning to see that it was true. She should have. Everyone else had changed out of the clothes they'd originally worn. Anwulika shivered against the cold. She wanted to go home. At that point, she didn't mind that her mother would scold and reprimand her. "Please, let's go home. I'm cold," she pleaded, shivering uncontrollably. "Nwa, it's okay. Let's go home. They must be back from the shrine by now." A lanky boy, which Anwulika realized must have saved her from drowning. Ojadili glared at him, but said nothing. By the time they arrived at the family compound, the party was already in full swing. The speakers blasted traditional Igbo songs loudly, and some of the women were dancing, while the elderly men shared jokes, ate kola nut, and drank palm wine, the native drink. Anwulika's mother was waiting for her at the entrance of the compound, and when she saw Anwulika, she ran to her and slapped her head across the face. Anwulika began to cry. The other kids ran inside to join the party, leaving her alone to her fate. "Mama," she sobbed as she shivered, "why did you disobey me?" Her mother asked, but drew Anwulika close and herded her into the compound. It was hard for Anwulika to answer. She did not want to say the wrong thing that would get her mother angrier at her. "I leave you alone for 1 minute, and you run off to God knows where with this village children that grew up here. Umun Zuzu, useless children." Her mother half yelled. It was a good thing that the music was very loud. Anwulika said nothing as her mother ushered her into her room and closed the door behind her. "Take off your clothes," her mother ordered, which she did. Then her mother gasped. Anwulika didn't look down to see what her mother had seen. In fact, she hoped it was nothing, and her mother was just making a fuss. Did something happen in the water? "Anwulika, come with me," her mother ordered. She followed without hesitation, scared to the bone. She wondered where her mother was taking her, and was only relieved to find out that she took her to the bathroom on their side of the family house. It was no news that for most Igbo families, there was a general house, often known as a family house, that everyone stayed in during the holidays. For Anwulika, their family house consisted of 10 bedrooms renovated by her father. To that respect, they always had ample space to themselves and their own personal bathroom. "You are a woman now," her mother said as soon as they entered the bathroom. She had gotten her first period, probably while she'd been in the water. Anwulika muttered a silent prayer of gratitude. It would have been much worse if Ojadili or her other cousins had seen her bleed into the water. Later, her mother showed her how to wear a pad and gave her an extensive lecture about easily getting pregnant. For the first time in a really long time, she felt close to her mother, almost like a friend. But it was a fleeting moment. Before long, she was hurtled back to her room and given specific instructions to stay in. This time, she had to obey her mother for one reason. She was on her monthly flow of blood. Traditionally, a woman was not allowed anywhere near a festival during those days, and much so, she had to stay away from her father so she didn't ruin the charms and Ogwu the native powers bestowed on a chief. By midnight, however, the party still continued and showed no signs of slowing down. Anwulika was hungry and racked with a lot of pain. She was suffering from cramps that threatened to make her pass out, and it didn't help that her stomach grumbled loudly. Following her mother's instructions, she stayed inside and away from the festivities. But when it was dark out and her mother was a show, it was obvious to her that she might go to bed hungry. She had to break her mother's rule and look for food. She didn't have to go far. The kitchen was the only place the wives and sisters in the family got together. It was the only place they bonded. So, Anwulika was expecting a bustling kitchen but was met with cold, empty silence. There was no one in sight. The pots, however, were not empty. Smoke billowed from one of the pots, and it filled the air with a strong aroma that made her stomach grumble in response. Anwulika worked quickly, grateful that she found no one there. It was even her favorite food, jollof rice. But by the time she finished taking her food and turned to leave, she saw Ojadili's figure at the door. He sneered at her and folded his hands. "Onye Oshi, thief! Why are you stealing food and meat at this time? This pot is for the elders." Anwulika swallowed. If there was one thing she'd learned, it was that Ojadili was loud and held a silent grudge against her, especially since the incident at the stream. "I have not eaten since, and I don't know where my mother is," she explained in the hopes that he would let her go. He didn't. "Why didn't come back out and join us after we came back?" he asked, blocking her path and cutting her only means of escape off. Anwulika stared at her food and tried her best to keep it together. The cramps were killing her. She pressed her legs tightly together. "Please, Ojadili, let's talk in the morning," she begged while hoping that someone would come to her rescue. By now, Ojadili was fully inside the kitchen, and he was looking at her in a way that made her skin bristle. He closed the distance between them and smiled at her. Ojadili was 3 years older than her and had quite the hefty build. He could do anything to her and get away with it, including beating her up. "I've liked you since you came back home for Christmas and New Year." He smiled again, and she saw that he had crooked teeth. Anwulika pressed her lips together to keep herself from showing the disgust she felt on her face. "Thank you," was all she said. But Ojadili clearly wasn't pleased with the answer she'd given him. He touched her hair and then her cheeks. Anwulika recoiled. "Bia, if you touch me that way again, I'll tell my mother." She threatened him. He only laughed and touched her again. This time, he touched her neck. Anwulika realized that if she didn't do anything to stop him, he would not stop touching her. She thought about calling for help, but it was no use. The music was still loud enough to drown her cries. "It's only me and you here. Asa, allow me W touch you. You're very beautiful, not like all these girls in the village," he continued. Food forgotten, she tried to push past Ojadili, but he countered her escape. Her plate for food clattered to the floor. "See what you've done?" she almost yelled. "If you shout at me again, I'll show you why they call me Ojadili." He warned her. She ignored him and tried to push past him again, but she was overpowered easily. He pulled her into himself. Anwulika felt something hard pressing against her belly. She was scared now. Then, like a burst of light in the darkness, a figure appeared holding a bright torch. It was pointed in their direction. "Ojini neme eba? What is happening here?" An elder's voice rang out. Ojadili was the first to pull away, and he staggered forward. "No," he greeted the older man. Anwulika greeted as well. The light from the torch was too bright, and the pain at her sides kept her fixated on one spot so that she could not move. The older man removed the torch and stared at Ojadili. "I saw your father and mother retiring to bed. You should follow them." Ojadili nodded once and stumbled out of the kitchen. No, he practically ran out of the kitchen, leaving Anwulika alone. The man turned to her. And you, why are you still awake? Wordlessly, she gestured to the pot of rice and the plate on the floor. I was very hungry. Where's your mother? He asked. She's with my father, she replied. The old man turned his torch this way and that, and for a brief moment she saw that it was her grandfather, Pa Njoku. The old man shook his head. This is the problem with young wives. They always want to be at the center of it all. I told you, rather to take care of her child first before any other thing. He glared at Anwulika like she'd been the offender. Soroem, follow me, he said to her, and she did. That was a costly mistake. Her grandmother's room was the biggest in the family house, even bigger than theirs. Anwulika thought it was a little too much since he was alone. His wife, her grandmother, had died after the birth of her father a long time ago. Her grandfather was a man who liked to do things his own way. Since their visit, she rarely saw him, and days when she did, he was always on his way out. He was a beloved palm wine tapper and loved his work as well. Not even when his children had begged him to quit palm wine tapping because of his age had he listened. Once, she had overheard her father saying to her mother that he knew his father. Her grandfather would die by falling down from a palm wine tree. You will stay here until your parents are done with the festivities, he told her. Anwulika didn't object. She should have. She nodded and shuffled gingerly to sit on the only chair in the room. It was made of wood and smells faintly of alcohol, probably palm wine. She thought to herself. He went into the inner room and brought out calabash that was partially covered. It was cold. He thrusted it into her hands. Eat. I also heard about what happened at the stream today. He pushed the plate into her hands, and she took it gratefully. The hunger she felt was intense at this point, and her insides felt like they were working overtime. It's Ofeuha. Nuye Di made it for me. Her grandfather beamed. He went into the room and brought out a plate of akpu, a cassava-made delicacy that was often eaten with soup. Anwulika was doing her best to hide her dislike for the food she'd given. She hated akpu and its horrible smell. Worst of all, she hated Ofeuha, but he was being considerate, and she didn't want to say no. Thank you, sir, she said in a low voice. She made a show of washing her hands, and an even bigger show of eating the food. She was only 3 morsels in when she felt the urge to retch. She then pushed the food away. Her grandfather laughed and patted her on the back. Ndi Oyibo, your mother had better put you on a strong diet, none of that rubbish you normally eat. He said to her, I'll have to tell my son and his wife to feed you better. Anwulika nodded, but her heart was not in it. She was no longer hungry, and she needed to sleep. She made a mental note to pay her grandfather a visit later in the morning. She was not close to her relatives. I want to go to sleep. I'm already full, sir, she said to him. Her grandfather laughed and waved his long, wrinkly hand in the air. It was a dismissive wave. Nonsense. Mba. No. What if Ojadili is still awake? What if he's still waiting for you? He asked. That seemed to take the will out of her, and she relaxed back in the chair. You should avoid boys like Ojadili. Their blood runs hot and they all want one thing. He smiled at her, and she could see his teeth, yellowed from years of tobacco use. He moved closer to her. Come to the bed and tell me about the stream. Tomorrow I'll talk to your mother about handling Ojadili. He was so sincere and nice that Anwulika moved to the bed. He sat beside her, and she started crying. She had no idea why she was tearing up so hard. It's okay, Nwam. "My child, stop crying," he cajoled, patting her back lightly. Innocently, she narrates everything that had happened back at the stream to him, and he listens attentively. By the time she was done, she was shaking, and tears dropped steadily. "This is what I meant. What if Enwa Mummy had not been there to save you?" Anwulika did imagine, and she didn't like the outcome. She could have drowned. That ushered her into another round of tears. He put a hand on her back and rubbed it gently while she cried. Then, without warning, his hands moved further down and to the small of her back. "Papa," she called out nervously. What was happening? What was he doing? "Please let me go back to my room. My mother must be worried about me." Her grandfather laughed, and for the first time she realized that he was drunk. With the way palm wine and oseoji flowed freely at the coronation, it was plausible. Anwulika shifted away from her grandfather and moved to the door. "I have to go, sir. Good night." Her grandfather said nothing, and she was about to find out why. She twisted the knob and tried to get out, but she could not. It was locked. Cold fear washed over her. "Come back, Nan," he said to her. When she made no attempt to move, he went over to where she stood by the door. Anwulika felt like a deer in the headlights, and like a mouse caught in a trap. She pushed into the door like it would absolve her from the fear she felt. Her grandfather grabbed her forcefully by the arm and pushed her to the bed. "It's surprising how you've grown into a fine young girl. The last time I saw you, you were so tiny I was scared to hold you." He grinned, displaying his teeth again. Anwulika tried to get up from the bed and away from the older man, but she had no luck. He threw her back on the bed and held her down. He was much stronger than her despite his age. He pinned her down and pushed her panties down. Anwulika struggled. She was disgusted and horrified. "I'm on my period!" she cried. If her grandfather heard her, he wouldn't show it. Instead, he unseated on her like a predator cornering his prey. The last thing Anwulika truly registered was the blinding pain she felt when he slid into her. Anwulika stared at the baby's cot lying inside her room and fought the urge to cry. She looked down her stomach and felt the urge to throw up. It wasn't because of the fact that she was pregnant. No, she wanted to throw up because she was disgusted. At the age of 12, she was pregnant with the baby of her grandfather. She felt like killing herself. After the night he'd raped her, she did not tell anyone. She was too ashamed to tell anyone, and she was scared that no one would believe her. A few months later, she realized that hiding that fact was as useless as pouring water on a basket. Soon, she was racked with morning sickness and the usual symptoms that came with pregnancy. Her parents were appalled when they found out that she was pregnant. Later, when she was asked who the father of her child was, and she said it was her grandfather, her father had slapped her hard against her face that his cheeks had hurt for a week. Eventually, she was sent to the village till she gave birth. It was too much shame for her parents to bear, but no one considered her feelings, and no one believed her when she told them the truth. It was unseemly that her grandfather would rape his own granddaughter, and at that age. Her grandfather ignored her and denied that he'd raped her. In short, life for Anwulika took a dreadful turn. It was filled with silent mockery from her peers and silent judgment from the older people around her. The next couple of months leading to her delivery were the longest of her life. She had no friends, and everyone around her treated her like she was a leper. Her mother had abandoned her, too ashamed to check up on her. As her delivery date drew near, Anwulika grew apprehensive. She'd heard stories about childbirth and how harrowing it could be. She prayed every day because it was the only thing keeping her alive. Sometimes she fantasized about jumping into the stream again and letting herself drown. Her mother finally paid her a visit a week before her due date. The silence hung in the air, thick and impenetrable. She didn't know what to say to her mother. In truth, she despised her for not believing in her and for abandoning her. "How are you?" her mother had said, turning her face away. Anwulika did not answer. She didn't see a need to. It was not as though her mother cared. "I brought you a colt for the baby," her mother said simply. Maybe it was the way her mother's eyes looked kind, or maybe it was because she was so alone it was heartbreaking. She turned to her mother, her eyes brimming with tears. "Will I die, Mama? I heard it's painful," she said, hiccuping. Her mother turned to look at her then, her eyes filled with something Anwulika could not decipher. "All you had to do was obey me. I told you times without numbers that day to stay in the room, but you continually disobeyed me. Whatever happened to you, you had it coming." Anwulika felt her heart break into pieces. She stared at her mother, her eyes filled with hot tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Then her water broke. "Push!" Anwulika heard the midwife's voice, but it seemed far away. If she thought cramps were life-threatening, then the pain of childbirth would actually take her life. She gripped the sheets as hard as she could and tried to breathe. "Nay, push! This is not the time to be weak," the midwife said again. Anwulika shook her head as her eyes rolled back in her head of their own volition. She was tired, her body ached, and she was finding it hard to focus. "Obaranaga," she heard someone say to the midwife, which meant that she was losing blood. What was the point, she thought to herself. It would be better for everyone if she died, but she didn't. Hours later, Anwulika lay on the raffia mat in the obi. She could not feel her legs, and each time she tried to move, it hurt really bad. Her mother was sitting outside the obi, holding her nostrils. Then she felt the urge to pee. She tried to get up, but could not. Then again, she didn't need to. The pee flowed freely down her legs and onto the mat. Later, she was told that she lost her bladder as a result of pressure. She'd also lost the baby, and she could not hold pee anymore. Her life was ruined. Her mother had apologized to her, and her father had been beside himself with guilt. Apparently, when the baby was born, stillborn, he bore the exact same appearance as her grandfather Pa, Njoku. Everyone finally believed her, but it was too late. It was the first time she'd seen her father cry. But none of those could take away the pain she felt. Her grandfather was cast away from society, and some months later, he died. Her parents wasted no time in taking her away from the village. They did all they could to make it up to her, including taking her to some of the finest doctors. She wanted to resent them for doing that 9 months too late, but she still forgave them. They were her parents, after all. Anwulika never got better. Although she managed to get a system to control her loose bladder, she never got married either, but she grew up to be a successful artist whose paintings told a gruesome but touching tale. From time to time, Anwulika wondered if her life would have turned differently if she'd obeyed her mother and stayed at home that day. If she had, she would have eaten and would not have ventured out at midnight for food. She realized that sometimes it was better to be obedient than curious. Anwulika spent the better part of her life setting up NGOs that would aid girls like her. It was her life's work, and it comforted her to know that she helped others in need. Do you think things would have gone differently if she'd obeyed her mother? What do you think about teenage pregnancies? I'd love to know what you think in the comments section. For more stories like this, don't forget to show some love by hitting like and subscribe button. Until next time.